I don't think that it's threatening or offensive to say, hey, I'd like you to understand what it's like in my world. Why should you understand what my life is like until I tell you?
Welcome back to Educator University. As teachers, it can sometimes mean we're pouring a lot of energy and patience into our students. But what happens when we have nothing left to give when we get home? That's why we have Rafi Bilek here. He is a marriage counselor and author of the Couples Communication Handbook. With over a decade of experience, he shares practical strategies for staying connected, asking for support, and navigating the stress of teaching while keeping your relationships strong. Welcome, Rafi.
Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. What's unique to our profession is that we do have a lot of sensory overload, and we come home, and I think sometimes if our partners aren't in a similar situation, they may not understand or empathize with kind of the amount of overload we've had for the day. How do we help our partners and family understand kind of what we've been through?
Now, I think that's probably one of the areas where preparing in advance is key. Trying to help them understand after a long, horrible day how long and horrible it was can be tough. But having conversations in advance, being connected outside those difficult times and saying, you know what, let me tell you what it's like when I have a rough day. Let me tell you what it's like dealing with the students and the staff and whatever else it is, and giving them a sense. And so now you know when I come home and I say it was a tough day, you have some sense of where I've been and what I've been through. And I think that, preparing in advance gives us a leg up in dealing with those situations when they come up.
So maybe as you're driving home as a teacher, you're thinking through not only decompressing from the day, but how am I going to communicate what I've experienced to the people that I love when I get home so they understand?
Right. Coming home and trying to, after you're being, once you're frazzled after a difficult day, then trying to articulate that can be really tough. So again, at a time that's calm to try to explain what it's like inside your head and inside your body in those moments. And then you come home and you can say, hey, I'm having one of those days where they know they've gotten a sense of what that's like. That might help you get some space and some understanding without having to draw out more and put more energy into explaining that.
So actually, you're suggesting to have a separate time, a conversation just about this at a time that's more calm, like on a weekend or something. Is that what you're
I
saying,
think
kind of?
so. If there's a
Okay.
common thing where you come home and you're frazzled and you're overloaded, and trying to explain it is going to be hard for anybody at that point. Yeah,
Yeah.
pick some calmer time and saying, "Hey, this is what it's like for me. Let's sort of connect around this. Let's get an understanding so you know what state I'm in when I come home from a day like that."
Yeah. Do you have any sentence frames or ways to start the conversation? I think at times we're afraid that we're going to offend, maybe. And so is there ways you can bring this up in a conversation that creates harmony and not dissonance?
Yeah, I think that a lot of dialogue needs to happen in marriages and relationships around understanding the other person's experience. I don't think that it's threatening or offensive to say, hey, I'd like you to understand what it's like in my world. I mean, you don't live in my head. You don't know what it's like to do my job. I don't know what it's like to do your job. And so spending some time talking about what my life is like, what the world looks like through my eyes, I think is very valuable. Why should you understand what my life is like until I tell you? I don't think there's any shame or any harm in saying, I'd like to understand what it's like for me. And I think this applies not just to our jobs, but to everything that we're doing, how I interact with my coworkers, how I feel about myself professionally and personally, and why it drives me crazy when my mom calls me on the way home from work. And all the things that go on inside my head, you're not gonna know until I tell you.
It's a really good point is that sometimes we think people can read our minds. Even as teachers, we're thinking our partners can read our minds, but really maybe they need a little bit of help understanding what's happening and just communicating that can be the first step.
Yeah. And for those listeners, by the way, if you're married to another teacher and you think, well, they're also a teacher, they should know what's in my mind. No,
Right?
everybody's experience is different. Just because you find it difficult to deal with XYZ doesn't mean they do. Maybe they like that part of the job. To assume that your partner is going to get what you're going through without you making it very clear to them is a losing proposition.
That's a really good clarification because I actually was thinking that you'd understand each other if you're teaching both, but that's true if you maybe you're coming from such different angles and personalities and also teaching different classrooms in different places and things like
Yeah.
that. So, yeah.
I mean, really, you could be teaching the exact same classroom at different times of the day and have a totally different experience. But yeah, probably you're not teaching the same kids or the same grade level or the same subject, and you have different experiences. And you think, well, isn't it obvious that when the kid says this, that, or the other, that should be annoying? That's not annoying to everybody. Isn't it obvious that it should be overwhelming when, there's a big test coming up and the kids aren't ready? And that's not overwhelming to everybody. It's fine if that's how you feel about it, but if you assume that your partner feels the same way and knows how you feel, then we're not in connection, and that isn't a supportive feeling.
Yeah, so it sounds like assuming is a big problem when it comes to
Oh, yes.
relationships. Yeah. Yeah. So we kind of talked about maybe some of the things that could be a problem in terms of understanding. I'm kind of curious what kind of advice you'd have for creating that emotional connection. Of course, talking about where you're coming from is that maybe that first component. Are there other things that you talk about in your book or in your practice that helps to build that emotional bond, even when they're feeling a little stressed in terms of their
Sure. I
job?
mean, I think that the first thing to realize is that when we are emotionally ramped up, it may not be the time to talk about whatever the issue is, right? So if I came home from a bad day at work, maybe I want to vent and dump on you, but maybe I want some space. And if your partner isn't really responsive to what you need, that is not the time to tell them they're not being responsive. Taking some space and calming down before trying to deal with an issue is really helpful. That allows us to get to a place where we can build connection, right? And then afterwards to say, you know what, I really could use a place to dump. Could you just hear me out? And just making sure that your partner knows what's needed at that point from them. And again, this is a conversation that happens before. Hey, honey, when I come home and I had a bad day, I just need you to listen. I don't need you to fix my problems. Right? That kind of preparation will help us get what we need in those moments where we can't articulate it as clearly.
Yeah, it's really about finding the right time and place to communicate these things. And I think if it feels urgent, maybe it isn't as urgent as it feels. Sometimes you feel like I need to tell someone this right away, but if they're not in the right place for it, maybe it's not the right time to do
Right.
it.
Rarely are relationship issues at the level of urgency. Usually when there's an emergency, you know it because there's like blood on the floor or something like that. But like short of that, okay, this can wait a little bit. This can wait 5 or 10 minutes or an hour or a day until I'm ready to calm down and talk about it. And it feels compelling to do it in the moment, but it's rarely very helpful to deal with an issue when you're mad about it.
Yeah, finding a place of calm for both parties is always a great place to kind of start the conversation. So I think along with the conversation of, finding a good connection and finding ways to communicate our needs, one of the things teachers I think struggle with at times is that they struggle communicating their needs in the home place. For example, maybe they are feeling overwhelmed with chores or with kids and that maybe they feel like there could be more of a balance, especially because teaching takes a lot of like that caretaking. Do you have tips in terms of communicating that and having those conversations with partners about responsibilities in the home?
Yeah, right. Home is definitely different than school. And again, I think we go back to the point that we're talking about not at a time of being worked up and stressed. Those are not the times we're going to solve these issues. Teachers have the same issues that other relationships have, along with the overwhelm that they get from dealing with 2 dozen kids every day. So being able to come home and at a time that's calm, say, you know what, these are the parts that are not working for me. And the book that I wrote is all about how do we have a conversation that is helpful, communicative, productive, involves appropriately speaking about the issue. So if I come and I say you don't clean this house well enough, it's always dirty when I come home. If I'm talking about you and I'm blaming you and I'm accusing you, that's not going to get us very far. When I talk about you, I'm inviting you to argue with me. I'm inviting you to say, well, no, I clean up all the time. And so, and that's a fight. Right. And everybody who's listening has been in a fight like that, where I said this and you said that, and it doesn't go. So being able to speak in a way that you can be heard, which is, you know what, when I come home and the house is still really messy, it's just very stressful for me. I just want you to understand what the world looks like through my eyes, what it's like to be me. I'm not accusing you. I'm not even telling you what should be different. We're not working on how to clean up the house. We are working on you understanding that it's stressful for me. If you understand that it's stressful for me to come home to a messy house and you care that I'm having a stressful moment, now we are in connection. Now we can move to the part where we do try to come up with a solution. But running right to the solution without going through the part of empathy and validation about that doesn't work very well.
That's a really powerful way of thinking about it. Thinking about speaking from your own experience and what it makes you feel is a much more powerful way to start than to just accuse someone or to come at it like what I want you to do, sort of thing.
Nobody
Yeah.
responds to that well.
Yeah, and I think that we actually it's funny in our teaching career, I think a lot of us do that naturally, but then it's coming home and doing that same thing. And so I think that it's kinda transcribing some of those skills into, the home life as well.
It's easy to drop it when you get home. You think like, "Ah, I'm out of my professional role right now. I can just sort of let my hair hang down," which is true to an extent, but if you're gonna let down your interpersonal skills as well, I mean, it's at least as important with your partner as it is with your students.
Yes, for sure, for sure. And I think part of that importance is carving out time for our significant others, even though we have a schedule that feels busy or tiring. Do you have tips when it comes to finding time and carving out that time intentionally?
Yeah, I recommend making a time machine. If you can build a time machine, then you're all set. I highly recommend that approach to making more time. Short of that, it is hard to scrape it together. It's absolutely true. It's a busy world for everybody, teaching schedules, and maybe that doesn't match up with your partner's schedule. And so every couple is different and has to carve out the time where they can. Maybe it is Sunday morning brunch where we sit down and just chill and have some nice time. Maybe it's 5 minutes a night after dinner, there's coffee or tea together, or whatever it is. Just being intentional and saying, you know what, we got to find some time together and making it happen. However you do it, wherever you do it. Maybe, you're getting a babysitter every Friday night and you go out. You know, every couple is going to be different. Every situation is going to be different. But if we have in mind we need some time together as a couple, then we'll get there.
Is there something from your experience, like a certain amount of time that is ideal per week? Is there a certain amount of hours or dates that you suggest in your experience?
I think everybody is different. Some people
Okay.
need more, some people need less. Some people are really into spending time together and that fills their bucket. And some people feel okay not spending so much time together. And so it depends on the individuals, it depends on the couple, it depends on their circumstances. If you can get out every week for date night and you enjoy that, great. If you don't enjoy that, or it's not possible because the schedules don't line up and the finances don't work out for babysitter and like all these things, so you do what you can. And I think every couple has to figure it out for themselves. I don't think there's a hard and fast rule like this is the minimum. People are different, and whatever works for them is what's going to work for them.
That's good to know. It's very varied depending on kind of just the personalities and everything. That makes a lot
Different
of
strokes for
sense.
different folks, man.
Are there like small daily rituals that you recommend that help couples to communicate better, especially when they're going through maybe the week's a little stressful, but there's maybe little moments or routines they can put into their life to build a stronger relationship?
Yeah, I think that, for people who can come and lay out some of what's going on for them without trying to turn this into a big solution conversation or a big deal, like, hey, I had a tough day at work today. Oh, yeah, what happened? Oh my gosh, uh, you know, Ani was like such a disaster. You know how he is. Oh yeah, that's rough. Great. That could be it. That's like a moment of connection where I tell you what's going on, you hear me out, you don't add in your own piece. You don't evaluate. You don't judge. You don't solve it. You just hear me out. Like, oh, we're connected. And that's a really important thing to do. Like we said, for the problems, we're like, I'm upset at you because you didn't clean the house up. That's a very important way to be able to do it, to hear me out. But if you can practice that on the small things that are less spicy, I came home, I had a bad day at work, or your car broke down, or whatever, and I just hear you out, like, oh, that's rough. I'm sorry that happened to you. We build in some empathy into small ways and into the day that can help us when we have the bigger conversations we need to have.
So it's not just those smaller conversations throughout the week, just checking in. That's kind of the rituals that you're kind of recommending or the routines.
Checking in
Yeah.
without trying to fix it or change it, but just like, oh, I hear where you're at, right? I have empathy for you. I care about where you're at. Showing those little moments of caring connection can make a difference.
Something you keep mentioning is like not always trying to solve it, but just hearing and having empathy. Is that something that you notice in couples that's such a big piece of what you do?
Yeah, it's a big man-woman dynamic. Not always, the genders can be different, but like it's a common thing that you hear where a woman comes home and wants to talk about whatever happened, and the man jumps right to fixing it. Whether it's like, nature or nurture or whatever, it's a thing that I've seen out there, and that there's lots of jokes in the culture about it. And yeah, I mean, people want to fix a problem, especially men. We often feel like it's our job to fix the problem. And the truth is, that's not what you got married for. You didn't get married to have somebody solve your problems. You got married to have someone to go through life with. And before we try to solve a problem, if we can stop to understand it, it goes a lot better because you can't solve a problem that you don't understand.
Yeah, it's like a two-step process, right? Understand and then solve, right?
Right, that's exactly the two-step process I recommend. One of the chapters is called exploring versus resolving, meaning before you try to resolve the problem, we have to explore it. Before you try to tell me, okay, here's how we're going to clean up the house, we have to understand what about it makes you so upset. Why is it hard for you when the house is not clean? What is hard for you about cleaning the house? Let's understand all the parts of it before we try to make it go away, because it's not going to go away if there's parts we haven't heard out yet.
Yes, and there is a lot of cultural references to this idea. I know I've seen a little video with the I don't know if you've seen the lady with the nail in her head,
It's not
and
about the
they're like
nail. Plus, I bust that out in the sessions all the time with people.
yeah, yeah, I'm just like and they have, they're always like, "There's a nail in your head." She's like, "I don't care. I have a problem and I wanna talk about it." So, yeah,
Just
I think that's
stop trying to fix it. I just want to be heard. It's
yeah,
like, okay, fine, fine. I'll just listen.
I'm sure you'd heard that because I was thinking that we're talking about that. I was thinking that for in my head all the time.
Yeah.
as partners to be able to be empathetic is just first trying to understand each other without trying to solve the problem. And that's kind of the first step that you're kind of
That's what we
suggesting.
want from each other. We like, as much as it would be nice to have a solution, not every problem has a good solution. But a and a relationship is not based on how many problems can we solve. It is, are we together in this? Sometimes we're going to go through tough times. Sometimes we're going to argue. Sometimes we'll disagree. But are we together in this? If I care about you and you care about me, okay, we have a disagreement. We have a problem, but we're still together.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, like you mentioned, sometimes conflicts will arise. That's a normal part of
Yeah.
relationships. Do you have strategies in terms of when it comes to that point? Maybe you're feeling conflict. Do you have suggestions for go-to strategies in that moment for couples or partners to work together in a way that is effective?
Yeah, well, so in the moment again is not the time to be effective,
Okay.
right? You step on my toes, literally or metaphorically. That is not the time I'm going to talk to you about what's bothering me. It's not going to work. I'm too angry. I'm irritated. I won't do it well. First thing is always take a break, come back to it later. But yeah, then again, the whole book is founded on these communication strategies that do a better job of getting through these and getting connection, even when the problem may not be solvable, or if it is solvable, but first getting that connection. So it means speaking to be heard in I talk about me and my experience, and the book goes into a lot of detail about how to do that and troubleshoots the problems with it. And then the listener, for them to step back and be a listener and not respond with their own input. What I tell people to do is there's only four things you can do when you're listening to your partner's problem. And that is LOVE. It's a fantastic acronym, I'm telling you. L, you listen, then you reflect in your own words, and then you validate, and then you empathize. Anything else you do in that moment is not going to be effective. And you know this is true because you've tried it and it's not effective. People often think that if I explain to you what's going on, you won't be upset at me. You're mad at me. And if I just tell you, I explain why you shouldn't be mad at me, then you won't be. And everyone on this who's listening has tried this before and knows that it doesn't help. Nobody ever goes, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Now I'm not mad at you anymore. That doesn't happen. We just get into a bigger fight. So when I'm listening, I'm going to listen, not to respond to you, but really just to hear what you're saying. And then I reflect back and I say, okay, so it really stresses you out when you come home and the counter's all dirty with the dishes still. Okay, I get that, right? I validate that. That makes sense. I can understand why that would be stressful. Or if I don't understand, I'll ask you, well, help me understand. What about that stresses you out? And I'll listen and I'll reflect some more until I get it. Oh, you know what? That does make sense. It just feels very chaotic for you. I get that that's stressful. And then I empathize and I say, that sounds really tough. I'm really sorry that happens to you, right? I may not agree that I'm the one that left the mess. I may not agree that it's messy. We may have different definitions of what constitutes messy and chaotic, but that's not important right now. What's important is you're stressed out. It bothers you. I can empathize with that. I'm really sorry you're having that experience. There's no blame and no judgment. I care about you. And that makes for a good connection. And that gets us to where we can actually make things different.
I think that piece about blame and taking things personally is such a piece when it comes to things like even just cleanliness of the house or things getting done when you get home and not taking it personally on either side that it was you that didn't do it. It's just that it's frustrating in that feeling that you're
Right?
having.
I'm
So,
not talking
yeah.
about who did it or what the problem is. This is bothering me, right? The house is messy and it stresses me out. Can't argue with that. You can argue whether it's your fault or good, but I'm not talking about fault. I'm saying this bothers me. I am hurting right now. I am stressed right now, and I could use your empathy.
Yeah. Yeah, what a great acronym too. The LOVE is very attuned to
Easy to
what you
remember.
do. Yeah, easy to remember too. So I'm kind of curious, you work with a lot of different kind of clients for over decades. Could you share maybe a story of, I don't know if you could share even like maybe a teacher who's been able to transform their relationships by changing how they communicated with their
Sure, yeah. I mean, I've seen folks from all professions and walks of life. I think one of the hardest things with teachers is that their schedule often does not match up with somebody who has a more traditional job or even someone who's working into the evening. That really sucks up their time. So I had a client once where, she was at work from like 7 to 3 and he worked closer to normal, like, 10 to 7 or whatever it was. And by 7 p.m., she's already, she's exhausted and done. And, she's getting to bed at 8 or maybe 9 or whatever, and so then, there's like putting the kids to bed. And so they just had no time together. And that was difficult. And again, that there was no easy solution for that. It's not like either one of them is about to quit their jobs. But they were able to carve out some time on weekends and talk about what those experiences were like and talk about how they wish they had more time together and talk about how it stresses them out that they don't and they miss and just being able to talk about these things brought them back into connection. Whereas they hardly saw each other and they were mad at each other and disconnected and strained. But like going through that together instead of apart made all the difference. So being able to find time on the weekends to say, hey, I'm going to talk now. Like, I just miss you. And I'm so stressed and it drives me crazy when you're on your phone and or whatever it might be. But like having that communication and connecting around it and listening, validating, empathizing, that brought them back into connection and really made them feel a lot better. It didn't solve the craziness of their lives. It didn't make the schedules any better, but it made them feel like they are going through it together. And that's what they wanted. People want a good relationship. That's where life is in our relationships. There's a lot less in what we're doing at 7 a.m. or 7 p.m. It's in like, who are we doing this with?
Yeah, and reminding ourselves we're on the same team. Like you said, having those weekend meetings help them to realize that. Yeah, yeah, it can be easy to forget that when you're in the busyness of life. Yeah, that's a really good example because I think a lot of teachers can relate to what you're talking about with the scheduling issues and kind of wanting to have more time with their partners. So that's kind of a good reminder. If teachers walked away from this conversation with one key habit to strengthen their relationships at home, what would you suggest it would be?
Wait until later. I think that's the key strategy that people need. It's so tempting when everything's flying and there's a lot of stress and there's things to be done at home that you want to jump into it right away and solve it right away. And putting it off, waiting until you're calm. A lot of people are actually pretty good at communication. It just never gets there because they start yelling as soon as something comes up. Everyone could stand to do a better job on it, but so many people are good people, nice people, except when they're stressed out. And then we start yelling at each other and saying nasty things that we don't mean to say. If people could just take a break, put it on pause, come back the next day, you'll find that a lot of things will go better. And whatever communication strategies you have available to you, I think that if you just wait a little bit longer, it comes out much better.
Yeah, finding the right moment for things. Like finding the right words is one part, but it's almost finding the right time so that you have the right words to say. Are there any final thoughts that we haven't covered that you want to share with teachers?
I mean, teachers are like our most valuable national resource, and are so undervalued and so pushed and strained. And so I empathize with the struggles that you guys go through, trying to make it all work, trying to take care of our kids, my kids, and then come home and be a human being as well. So I just want to really encourage you and support you and appreciate you for the hard work you do. And I hope that I can contribute in some way to making your lives better as well.
And I know you have in this conversation, so thank you so much for sharing. Before we get off here, there's some fun questions for us to get to know you a little better. So the first one is favorite teacher lunch.
Favorite lunch? Boy, I like spaghetti and cheese. I like leftovers. So if we have spaghetti, I'll warm it up with some cheese and sauce, and I'm good, man. I'm simple.
Hey, love it. Can't go wrong with spaghetti. Your best behavior management or emotional regulation tip.
Boy, I'll be honest. In the times where I have done teaching gigs or like substitute teaching, classroom management is so my weak point. Man, that's why I like. I like working with the one-on-ones, and I like working with adults better. Okay, behavior management tip. Look, I do have kids. I'll tell you actually what my best one is with my own kids, and I'm sure this applies in schools as well. Distraction. Distraction is great. Sometimes you have a young kid and they're barreling forward with some demand, and they need. I cannot tell you the number of times I've walked into my kids' room with their socks on my ears. That does wonders, man. I don't know you can do the socks on the ears thing in school, but like redirection, distraction, I think is a great tool.
Yes, we do that kind of stuff in our class, redirecting things to a better place, especially when kids are upset. That's a really good point, actually. A teacher in your life that made a difference.
Mrs. Reynolds. Mrs. Reynolds was great. She taught me, I remember she taught me some basic finance stuff. I mean, she was my math teacher, but she was just very encouraging. And she told me how to handle credit cards, which nobody had taught me. And she gave me some life skills. That was great.
Awesome. Last question here for the questions is the last lesson that you taught.
That's something that I taught. Oh boy. Again, so I'm not in the classroom right now. I'm teaching people all day long how to do communication.
Yeah.
So really, teaching people how to do this in a way that works for them. That's where my heart is.
Yeah, and that's what your book is all about. So
Yeah.
that really makes a lot of sense. So talking about your book, talking about you, where can my audience find you?
So they can find me and the book at thecommunicationbook.com. The first two chapters are available for free there. There's an ebook, there is an audio chapters you can download, and you can get a taste of it and see if you think it's helpful. A spoiler alert, it is helpful. So you can go check that out there, and there's a link to the Amazon book from that page, and there's a blog and all kinds of useful resources. Yeah, so I hope this book will be helpful to people. I'm trying to spread the message out there of marital harmony.
I think we all want that, right? We all want to have strong relationships in our life in all directions. So I will also link that in the description right below for the audience to click on if they want access to
Great.
it. So Awesome. Well, thank you, Rafi, for being here. I appreciate all the value you brought for the teachers here today in their relationships, and I'm excited to hear from them in the comments about what they learned.